also, there's an exercise at the end that I've tied into, I used Murphy's Law to my advantage, as one of my coworkers said, and tied a Git repo mess up to this, to an exercise for you guys. So we'll talk about it later if there's time. I'm sure there will be. But the demo app allows you to, I thought it would be nice if you guys could, since I'm talking about tracking, which a lot of my friends call user stalking, I thought it would be cool that you guys could look at my social media accounts, all aggregated into one page. So you guys can stalk me while I stalk you, is what my friend said. So, but you can export the tracking to file. You can look and see. If you click the export file piece, it'll export a folder. Sorry, not a folder, but a file to your files directory on your phone, and you can see what would be an example of what would be sent off to a remote database. So that's the, you can scan that and download the app, and then go to the repository and download the source code. So let us begin with the age-old question, what is analytics? It's not an age-old question, it's probably about as old as 1996. But what it is collection, it's the analysis and reporting of internet data. There are two categories. There's on-site and off-site. Off-site is when you measure your user's behavior and you make a measure of what your potential audience is. So it's not people who are actually on your site or on your mobile app. It's people who are off-site, and they're people that you could potential customers. So there are two data collection methods, log file analysis and page tagging. And log file analysis, I'm sure a lot of you are already familiar with. It's where you're looking at your server logs and making a determination of making determinations about server requests and what pages your clients are requesting. You don't get any sort of idea of what actions your users are engaging in when they are client side. So anything that your Ajax functionality is allowing your users to do, you can't see that with server analysis or log file analysis. And page tagging is what's popular today. It's generally third-party companies do this. Client-side activity is gathered in this way as well. So, and what is user tracking, which is what we also do in my demo app. This is, we're logging characteristics about our user and the user's actions. And I just want to say, if you guys are looking on your, if you're looking at the scripts, I've been updating them like up to 5 minutes before the thing. So hopefully there are not too many big differences. I'm going to give you guys the updated PowerPoint slides once we're complete, just so you have everything. But this is user tracking is more granular than web analytics, because web analytics is it's a study of users at a broad view, and user tracking is when you're specifically looking at what a specific user is doing. You have an ID about you have identification, and you have information about a specific user. This is a sticky subject, so in my opinion, and the reason why this is close and near and dear to me, is I think that public apps we should have user permissions be our highest priority. That's why I really love Android. I love that you can see what permissions you're allowed to, that users are agreeing to when they download your app. However, with internal apps and with corporate phones, different rules apply. And I come from a corporate background where I've worked for Java shops under corporate places where they make you sign non-disclosure agreements for 10 years, and you can't compete with them. And I'm sure you're familiar, they can download your whole, your database, and they have a copy of not your database, but your disk drive. They have a whole copy of it, and they have authorization to do whatever to whatever laptops they give you. And the same goes for mobile phones. So if you sign for it, this is what you could potentially be agreeing to. So just letting you know. Why do we want to analyze our users, or why do we want to track them? we want to understand and we want to optimize our app usage. There's no point in having an app that users are not using. It's a waste of your time. It's a waste of users' time if your users are not using it. And you want to use it. You want to make something that will make your users happy. So that's good. They're business drivers. You can increase profit or you can increase cost effectiveness if you make sure your developers are working on the right parts of your app and that they're not messing up the parts of your apps that the users really like and that they're engaged in. It's also for market research, and the tracking part is, it could be safety, it could be employee usage, parental controls could be a reason why you would do this. So I like this slide. We're going to go more into this later on. I wanted to split up, when I looked at the like all the possibilities and everything you could do on the Google Analytics website and with other analytics software and with user tracking, I wanted to be able to split it up into ways that were relatable to me and things I understood. So I took it back to second grade when we learned about user stories and how do we tell stories about our users. And that was with our 5 W's, who, what, when, where, and why. And it's used to, whenever you want to gather information about users, for journalism or investigative reporting or any of those things, we use these. And I think that we should use these as well for web analytics when we go to do our reporting pieces and when we go to collect information. So I think we should keep these 5 W's in mind. So let's go in to talk about analytics software as a whole and the different types that are available to you. So I changed this in the morning. I had to update this. I made a distinction between software as a service and bring your own hardware is what I called it. I like the idea of, I prefer the idea of you keeping your own databases in-house and having all your data to yourself. And that's what I was going to focus this talk on. But my team members, when they read my description, they thought that it was mostly about Google Analytics, so I didn't want to go too far away from that, so that's what I talked about in this. But there are a lot of options. There's WebGens, which my team uses, Google Analytics, which we're going to start using more, which we're going to also talk about here. I thought that Snowplow was a software as a service, but it's not. It actually belongs on the BYOH, bring your own hardware side. There's Open Web Analytics and Pilic and Snowplow. These are all options that you have. Pilic and Snowplow are also available on GitHub. Those are open source, which I like. So Snowplow belongs on the bring your own hardware side. Over there, you can serve your own web pages. You can, which shows your dashboard. It shows your dashboard that shows all of your analytics in the same way that Google Analytics would, but you have control over that information and you can update and make changes. In addition, Pilic has Android and iOS packages available that you can use, which I think is very cool. Snowplow is planning mobilization down the line in the future. But one good thing about them is that they're powered by Hadoop and Hive, which means that you can do distributed applications. You can do analytics over several servers with Snowplow, so that's awesome. So why would you not use analytics sites like software as a service? I think maybe your company doesn't want to farm out its projects. Maybe your company has extra needs or has historical data, which Google Analytics does not allow you to. Once you set all of your configurations, which we'll talk about later, once you set all your configurations, you can only look at information based on that day, those configurations on that day forward. So anything in the past, you wouldn't be able to use those same configurations that you set up. So maybe your company has extra needs and they need to look at historical data, and you would probably more easily be able to, for example, clean your data and apply it to your database servers that you would have on these other software, BYOH, as I call them. Well, maybe your boss's boss is paranoid. Maybe the company's policy requires that you keep all of your data in-house, which is perfectly fine. I would prefer that. Maybe your data is too sensitive to keep on foreign servers like the Google Analytics servers, so you just need to keep them in-house. So that's why you would use those. Or maybe you just prefer open source like I do. So I spoke about open web analytics specifically because at the time I thought that, well, I have the slide for open web analytics specifically because at the time I thought that was the most updated one, but Piwik and Snowplow are also very updated, so they deserve their own slides too, so maybe in the future I'll probably add a slide for them. But with open web analytics, in addition to Piwik and Snowplow, you get to host your own database server, you get to host your own analytics site. It's open source and you can extend whatever you want. Open Web Analytics does not have an Android client library, so you have to roll your own, as opposed to the other two, which one is coming down the pipeline. Maybe Open Web Analytics is going to have one. I don't know, I haven't seen the website to see. A couple cool things about Open Web Analytics is, in addition to the other tracking types, they provide some of the same tracking types that we will talk about later with Google Analytics. But Open Web Analytics also includes DOM stream tracking and cross-domain tracking. So if you have let's say your company has two different brands that are linked together, two different websites, and two different brands that are, you have links from one to the other. A lot of, for example, web trends, we're having difficulty. I'm working with the web trends project. We're having difficulty tracking our users across domains. We're having to use session IDs and stuff. But Open Web Analytics will allow you to do cross-domain tracking, which is very cool. And DOM stream tracking, where you can track the stream of your mouse clicks, which I think could probably be adapted to smartphone user interactions. So, on to Google Analytics, and here's a platform overview, which I don't know. Can you guys see that? Can you see it? Yes? Maybe. All right. I'll talk you through it. So we'll go through this quickly. We're going to talk specifically about the Android SDK, because that's what we're interested in. There's a measurement protocol that you can use that's part of the Universal Analytics initiative that Google's putting out. It allows users to send HTTP requests with raw user interaction to the servers. So you can adapt your tracking to any, like for example, if you have a Rails application or any other sort of application, you could use that raw HTTP request to send data from your Ruby and your Rails applications and any other types that you have. That information gets passed through logs. It gets passed into logs right here, and you use your configuration that you've done in advance. This is weird. You do your configuration, all your configuration and setup, which allows, for example, you may configure. You may do your configuration to allow salespeople to look, like your sales department, to look at one portion of the data, your marketing department to look at another, so you would do all your configuration there. And when you do your querying on, like, say, for example, the web interface, that would be like the Google console or whatever, you would, when they log in, they would see those particular pages. Or you could use your reporting API, which we're going to talk about in more depth later on, because that's more developer-oriented, and I tried to keep this talk more closely to what us developers would be interested in doing. So if we go over the Google Analytics workflow very quick, I'm not going to go over this too much because I want to go more into how the workflow works for Android. But what we do is this is an example of, what you would do is you would copy your analytics snippet into your JavaScript page or into your web page, into the template. Before your closing heading tag, and this is an example of what the snippet does. So there's a queue where you're putting all your tracking commands on, and when that page is loaded on, when your page is loaded, that Google Analytics source code gets fetched and loaded, and the tracking object is built at that time. The script element gets loaded into the DOM. The tracking object then begins to collect data via a GIF request. Again, I said I'm not going to go into this one too much. I just wanted to give you guys an idea. And when I created this slide, I thought maybe there would be some sort of a correlation between how Android does it and how it would be done on a regular website. But it's done differently because there are different challenges on Google Analytics on an app that's being tracked, because you have battery concerns and network concerns and things like that. So on the Android device, we use the same conventional tracking model in terms of the 4 interaction types that you're using. We're going to be doing page tracking, event tracking, and the like. You keep your web property ID that you would use. It wouldn't necessarily be the same web property ID that you would use on your desktop site. But it's a very similar one. It's basically, we'll go into that in the future too, but you would use a web property ID. There's an Easy Tracker library available in version 2, which I went more into depth on because my demo app was registered for version 2. And it turns out, if your app is registered for a particular version, you can't do tracking on the other version. So I tried to roll back to version 1 to see how that would work, and I couldn't get any tracking data. You have to use version 2 if your app is registered for version 2 and version 1. I think with version 1 they probably allow you to upgrade. And actually, if you look on the instructional website, it'll tell you how to do the upgrade part. But the Easy Tracker library is like almost no dev effort at all. So I put a little frowny face because I love dev effort. So all you require is in your Android manifest is Internet and Access Network state permissions, and so that you won't get your exceptions or whatever, and you're on your way. So let's continue to the Google Analytics for Android workflow. So what I did here was I wanted to see how it worked. So I don't know if I'm allowed to do this, but I took the Google Analytics jar file and I unjarred it, or I used the JQID. I'm sorry?
You compiled it.
I decompiled it, yes. And this is what I found, because I wanted you all to see what happens. So when the track event gets called, a hit gets put into your localized SQLite database. Well, any sort of event that is called a hit, and it's put into your localized SQLite database. At any prescribed interval, which you can set in your, there's a configuration file that you can put to set all kinds of information about how you want to do your tracking. So in that, in there, you can also set how many intervals in which you want to do this, that you want to send these hits off. So at that prescribed interval, a dispatch occurs where all the collected data gets grabbed from the local database and gets sent to a network dispatcher. So the network dispatcher spins up an async dispatch task and puts it all on a thread handler. The handler then uses a pipeline requester and sends all of the hits over an HTTP connection. When this is all complete, the callbacks are invoked, but the only thing that the callbacks really do is set the network dispatcher to not busy, so it just sets a flag to false. And at that point, all of the hits that have been sent get cleared out so it can go again. So you need a visualization, so I created one for you. This is how it works visually, and I won't repeat everything unless you guys want me to, but this is just a visual for your future when you come back and look at the slides. So let's go on and talk about our database and how we can connect and how we can look in the database on our emulator or on our devices. Staging data, like I said before, is all tracked onto Staging data is all put locally on your database. And the next stop after that is going to be your Google Analytics servers. So if you want to use command line access, you can do that. You can open up an Android debug bridge and call these things ADD-S, where the emulator -S is going to be either your emulator or it's going to be a serial number of a device that you want to issue your ADD commands to. Then you call SQLite 3, and it's always the website, the database name is going to be google-analytics.db, or it's going to be Google_analytics_v2 if you're using version 2. And then after that, you can begin issuing your SQL-like commands, which you can find anywhere. You can Google them. You need to see them. Dot tables. This is the table. We're going to talk about the table. Or all of the tables if you want. If you want to see all the tables, you just call dot tables. It will list all of your tables for your Google Analytics database on your device. The most important table to me that I thought was the events table, because you get to see exactly what you'd be sending over. So this is an example of the data that you'd be sending. Number 6, that 6 is the hit ID. I wrote the columns out right here. So 6 is the hit ID, which that's more of a local thing. So if you use your app 10 times, or you've done evoked 10 events or whatever, then you would see 10 hits in your database all collected up. So the time here is in milliseconds. You have your hit URL, which is where all of the data is going to be collected on your remote servers, and then you have an interesting hit string which contains all this data. I went through, and I'm sure you could do the same thing, and looked and saw what all the parameters could be. Some of them I couldn't figure out, like V is equal to 1. I don't know what that is. UL is the user language. SR is your screen resolution. All this is being captured. T is app view. I don't understand. Maybe that is indicating that you're using a mobile app. What do you all think? Maybe? I don't know. SR, screen resolution. AN is the name of my application. TID is the table ID, or the web property ID, and so on and so forth. CID looks very familiar to me in terms of, if you've ever looked at the measurement protocol, you have to pass in a CID, which is either client ID, customer ID, something like that. And then CD is the name of, for example, this would be the name of, at the time, I put the entire name of my activity package, but I think you could change that to be just whatever page you're viewing at the time. Okay, so let's talk about data collection. And here I've switched 2 of my slides because I felt like when I read them out loud that they read better in a different, just 2 slides, you'll see. There are 4 data interaction types, basic interaction types, and this goes the same for your classic websites and for Android. There's page view tracking, there's event tracking, e-commerce tracking, and custom variables. So with page view tracking, it's essentially wherever requests for a new view is made, you would do your page view tracking. So this would typically be on your on-click events, or when your on-click events specifically bring up, your on-click listener, when it specifically brings up a new page. So your on-click listener may do something else. You may not want to do a page view at that time. So it's really any page request that you're doing. Event tracking is when there's something specific that your user's done and you want to track that event. It's very cut and dry. Any user interactions with your layout would be defined under the event tracking interaction type. And then e-commerce is very simple. It's in-app purchases that your user makes, or any shopping cart changes that your user makes. You can track that. And then custom variables, which we will talk about soon. So with page view tracking, this has been done in a long time, or for a while, with the server. With the server logging that was done in the past, we would also do page view tracking. So this is kind of a bleed over from when this was done back in the past. Page view tracking traditionally measures your volume to your site, your traffic volume, and mobile apps don't necessarily contain web pages, and your app structure would determine what page is viewed. So depending on what design decisions you made when you created your app, you would determine how you would do your page tracking there. So you may have a multiple activity structure where each activity determines a new page being viewed, where your activities have their own layouts. You can have a central activity in multiple fragments, where each fragment determines determines a new page. So when you change your page, you would maybe track your page view there. If you have a central activity and multiple layouts, that gets a frowny face, put a little frowny face there. That's kind of, but there may be some sort of solution. That may be where you had a problem and that was the only way you could solve that. So that's valid as well. Sure, and many problems that need to be solved. But you could also do any combination of the above. And those are just ideas of where you would probably do your page tracking. So here's some code example where we have a test page that extends an activity, and we have a Google Analytics tracker here where we create an instance in the onCreate function. We get an instance of our tracker and we pass in our web property ID. We set our content view, and in our onClick listener, you can see in the bold part, that's where we're tracking our page view. And then we go ahead and start the activity that would show our new page. And event tracking. Yes, let's go on to event tracking. Like we said before, event tracking logs user interaction with the app. So this could be button links, button clicks, link clicks, anything like viewing a video or viewing something where you're not necessarily seeing a new